Right, Ben. Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm right. Happy Sunday.
Yeah.
Sunday. So it's the weekend. How's your weekend going so far?
Yeah, it's been a recharging weekend after a pretty intense week of work. So yeah, just needed some time to sit and try and get some energy back this weekend.
Right. So your work,
Yep.
for anyone listening, what is it?
Um I work in education, and I'm currently working in a school where what's an ESC or a PRU is the old term for it.
I'm familiar with pupil referral unit
Yeah.
crew. What's
Yeah,
ESC? What does that mean?
the
I've not heard of that before.
Education Support Centre. I mean,
Ah, ah,
they're all different terminologies for it, but
okay. I have heard of when you say it, I've heard of it. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, it's for the young people that haven't coped in a mainstream school and need some more wraparound care. So he's more depth
Mhm.
provision. It's a much smaller setting for young people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. And I've got my own experience, not of being in one. Well, I've been in loads, but not personally because I went there. It's for what I've done in my work. That's how we met originally, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But you was at it's more of was it a academy? I can't remember. Is it an academy or a school for performing arts?
yeah. It was a school. I guess it was. Yeah, it's a different type of school. Yeah. I guess for just a bit of confidentiality, I guess, around
Of
what
course,
type
yeah.
of school it is. But yeah, the moment I name what type of school it is, it becomes obvious which school it is, I guess, for anyone that knows.
Yeah, 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 of course. Yeah, we've got to safeguard that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've known you quite some time now. When we first met, I was deployed by an organization that I was then associated with to come in and sort of, I think, re-establish a kind of presence within that facility, the school that you was working at, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we came in. I remember having a. Do you remember that? Yeah, when I came in, and I knew straight away that I was dealing with someone that wasn't your average, if that's the right word, ordinary person that would you'd find in one of those places.
Hmm.
You know, you struck me as someone that was like more like me,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely,
Just a bit
definitely.
outside the box, a little bit unorthodox, maybe.
Yeah.
Maverick. So we got on. What do you remember? What did we agree on at that time? Did we agree that I was like we was going to start to explore some stuff? Was that I can't remember really too much.
Yeah. I mean, the early days was like the whole that school itself was set up in quite an anarchic way for schools. I mean, it was the person that set it up. Yeah, really didn't do it in the conventional way, and they employed a number of people that were on that sort of artistic creative spectrum. Um, my background when it comes to teaching is art, and it's I can't I've never met anyone else that's got to senior sort of level of teaching and is an art teacher. It's not you don't find many head teachers that are art teachers. That's not a normal pathway for art teachers.
Do you think? Because to me, you know, if I didn't know better, I'd be like, "That's wicked." You know, that's an amazing thing that someone creative and artistic is right up the top of the stack. You know, of the you know school. Who
Uh,
has a lot of say in things. That's what you'd equate to that anyway.
yeah, I think systems in this country, systems in most countries are led quite conventionally, and people people don't like to do things differently. You know, they don't like to try and change the system too much.
Mhm.
Um, there's outliers always. There's always examples of schools that have really, you know, just thought, right, we're not going to do it like everyone else. And there are some, you know, great examples of those around the country.
And we're talking about when you say the country, we're talking about the UK, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But it's yeah, it's they are outliers. It's the majority of schools work in a system or are held in a system that suits a certain type of kid and attracts a certain type of person to work in them. It's, you know, it's the system. It's what we do. We don't question it
Yeah,
very often.
okay. And that's been something that's been going on for forever, really.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I'm saying.
yeah. And it's been taken. Like, I think there was a time. There was a time where it started to people started to look at education differently, but then the last government took us back, I don't know, 20, 40 years. And then we've gone back to a system where we're just chasing grades and we've forgotten about the people. We've forgotten about what else school gives apart from grades. Uh,
Okay.
the idea of socialization, the idea of, you know, just people.
Yeah, yeah, got you. Well, look, so, I share that, what you just described. I totally understand what you're saying, it's my kind of thinking as well, and it's just the way we see it, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we're on the front line
Yeah.
dealing with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when, we were in the early throes of our relationship, um, I was coming in, I think maybe once a week, I think, to
Yeah.
start off with. And at the time, it was all about building resilience, I think. That was like the hot topic, and that was quite a few years ago now.
Yeah.
Um, can't put the exact date on it, but it was a while ago. It's pre-COVID, and it was quite
Definitely
well,
pre.
quite
Yeah.
a long time before COVID. And things have changed a lot since then, and we can go into all of that, but, that's a whole different topic. But, um, I remember coming in, and we were the organization that I was working for, we were specifically, trying to build, resilience, doing workshops, and I was deployed to go into a lot of schools up and down the country, um, some colleges, to share experience, life experience, and to engage with some of the school's pupils, and target as many as and have as much impact as possible. And obviously, we had a team of people doing that, and that still goes on to this day, right?
Mm.
And it was for me, it's how I really learned to, do what I do now to this day, engaging with young people and how to really capture their imagination and maybe inspire and motivate them to make some change, which is a tough gig, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, when I was coming to your place, um, there's always that gaggle of the group, right? The select, um, I don't know what to call them, like the elite.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. They're the ones that are probably going to do something really incredible. They've just got to harness their, I hate to use the word, but shadow side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we started doing some workshops with. I remember we was just doing it as a general rollout in classes and stuff. But then I think we started to home in on the elite uh, cluster of young mavericks
Hmm.
that were struggling.
Yeah.
I think it's the kindest way to put it.
Yeah. I think that school was a creative school, and uh, those young people were particularly keen to experiment with everything that life could offer.
Yeah.
And quite often with that, I don't know if creativity automatically comes with a level of trauma, but I don't know whether that it is the starting point for so many young people, uh, of where they get pushed into that. But definitely that band of young people you were working with were full of trauma, full of addiction, and,
Mm.
weren't, able to see, uh, the good stuff, weren't able to see what you could offer them or what any of us could offer them at that time. They weren't ready to take the opportunities that were there. They
Yeah.
were too in their heads. They were too I guess I would go to I think it's that word resilience you use. I mean, I like the fact you said it's changed or I think it's probably about 10 years since you first came in. And, uh, that same conversation, I think it's got worse. The idea of resilience in young people and in humanity at the moment, I think is like at an all-time low.
Yeah. I'll just buy my resilience, right?
Yeah.
I'll just press click and I can buy my resilience.
Yeah, yeah. Here's the top 10 tips for what you need to do to be resilient. And, those young people were just, they were just quite broken. Quite a few of them
Mm,
were in real trouble at the time. And I don't know what their journeys or their stories ended up being, but I think the work that you did with them at that time was about trying to show them a different path.
yeah.
I think, it's the beauty but also the great weakness of youth, isn't it? Is in the strength of that ability to be totally, I know what I'm doing. I am right. You can't teach me anything.
Yeah. Fuck you.
Yeah, yeah.
Fuck you.
And I
I
think,
know. I
yeah,
know. Fuck you.
yeah. And they were in that classic. I've got anxiety. I need to use weed to make me less anxious, and obviously it makes them more anxious, and it's just this vicious cycle. And they and I always feel that when we were doing that work, or when you were coming in, and I think I've realised that more and more as I progressed
Mm,
through the system, is it's about. I wonder whether it's about them finding their bottom. You were coming in and telling them your story. This is where I got to. This is my lowest point, and this is the point where I decided I'm going to change.
yeah.
And I sometimes wonder with young people whether it's us trying to stop them from going too far down before they realise they have to grow.
I heard it recently said that with a lot of people that try and do interventions, whether it's a parent or, a professional or whoever, that we're kind of raising the rock bottom up.
Yeah,
Like we bring the bar up
yeah,
so that, or in a way, you could say you're lowering the bar so you don't have to go so freaking far with it or so high with your rock bottom or so low with your rock bottom. You're
yeah,
literally just trying to, you know, um, change that course. But
yeah.
I've got the evidence. Like I know that you can do that. You can intervene and prevent someone from killing themselves,
Hmm.
and you can prevent someone from hitting a complete and utter, like, you know, completely imploding and it getting so bad. You don't have to get to that point, but from my experience, it's the only motivator to start a change, a process. So, how do we reach those people that kind of, I don't know, they're at that age, like you say, they're at that heightened state of ego where it's like, fuck you, I know, I know, but you don't know. You
Hmm.
think you know, but you don't know. So do we let them just go and find out for themselves? Or do we, is that just what we're meant to be doing? Or do we try and influence and motivate and inspire change? Yeah.
I think that's what we're trying to do. So we're trying to break that invincibility of youth, and show them that that they don't have to get to the bottom before they grow. Um, Yeah, I think that's the hope, is that you're constantly trying to inspire and change. But they are so many young people uh, don't see any hope, I guess. And also, it's, yeah, I think you're trying to limit the damage we do to ourselves as young people before we decide to grow, before we decide to get to that point where the adult brain kicks in. And sometimes that can be in your mid 20s, and sometimes that can be in your
Mm,
40s, or never. I think, yeah, I think young people get defined, and they get defined as a certain thing, and we pigeonhole ourselves, and it's quite often where we get stuck.
mm,
And I've seen that so often, where young people have dreadful things hanging over their heads, and that defines them. And if that's the case, if we're saying, like, as a 13-year-old, this is it, you're done, then we might as well give up now.
yeah,
And that's what we can't do. We've got to keep showing them there is every day is a fresh start, and we can
yeah.
start again.
It's a tough gig, man, being, I don't know if I'd wanna, do it again. In this modern world that we're living in, it's
Definitely.
oh, madness, isn't
Mm.
it? But it is also beautiful,
Yeah.
you know? Okay. So where you're at now, you said when you checked in, you was like, "I'm recovering from this week." So that was like, we was just talking about a time that happened quite a long time ago. Where you went from there? Because I know for me, I started to get out of the, I wasn't going into schools. I started going into PRUs a lot actually, um, and that kind of sent me on a trajectory to work one to one with people who had problems. Like doing what I do. Um, where you've ended up now, what was your journey? How did you go from where you was to into that?
Um, so the school where I met you was totally comprehensive. It was probably the most comprehensive school I ever worked in. It had every echelon of society in it. It had your uber rich to your uber poor. And
Yeah, it's mad mix, wasn't it?
it really was a strange mix of,
Had that piano, didn't it? Had that
yeah,
sort of piano. I remember they all used to. It's almost like a sing along around the piano, and that was in the main sort of like hallway thing when you
yeah,
walked in, like the reception area and the where it went into the canteen.
yeah. That was donated by someone, that piano.
What
Or yeah,
Marquee not name them, but
I can no, as in I can't remember who it was.
oh, it's like
It was yeah, someone connected to the head at the time when she set it up.
someone fabulous, generous. Yeah,
Yeah. But they were a music teacher, so the head. So a lot of the school was sort of music based. Uh,
there was some talent in there, man. There was some incredible talent.
yeah. And I know there's no for a period of time we were churning people out going into the creative industries, just,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that's still happening, but I don't know in terms of connection anymore. But what happened working at that school was I started to work with and understand the trauma of what young people were going through. And it didn't matter in that school what background you came from.
Mhm.
It's you everybody seemed to come with a set of baggage.
Mhm.
And yeah, it didn't matter whether you were a multimillionaire's child or whether you were living without a front door and didn't know whether your parents were going to come home that night. It was everyone had a different issue going on. And it was something that I'd never worked with, particularly in education before. And in dealing with those young people, I then ended up working with some really challenging young people who basically just given up on, society has done nothing for them. They'd come from families where nothing had been done for generations. And yeah, and I moved across to work in a school where, yeah, the level of social deprivation, the families I'm working with are society doesn't really care, or that's how it feels to them.
So my understanding of like these PRUs and what's the other one called?
ESCs.
ESCs. My understanding of them are like they're the last chance saloon before the big boy institution of prison, right?
Yeah, yeah. Your chances again. I don't know if this is an exact percentage, but it's something like the moment you end up in an ESC or a PRU, your chances of going to prison are 60 or 70% higher.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a really sad statistic.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I ever went into one to do a talk. I must admit, I was with Joe as well.
Okay.
And so I had someone who's by my side, and we're not small guys, you know what I mean? And we walked in there. I felt intimidated, man. Quite an intimidating environment to be in, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. On a day by day basis, you're dealing with the most disillusioned young people who, and this is, I guess, I think you and I differ eh, from those kind of young people, and this is the mistake that a lot of people make about those institutions. Uh, like we had creativity, we had music, we had art. You were really into skateboarding. We had things that we were good at. These young people have nothing. If they were good at football, they'd still be in a secondary school because they'd be in the team. They would have something to live for in terms of, yeah, I'm good at that.
Yeah.
They would get some positivity. And the majority of these young people that come to us are basically, they have had nothing positive in their lives. There's not one thing they can hang their hat on and say, yeah, I'm really good at that.
Yeah.
Because if they did, that would save them. And that's what you see on a day by day basis is just kids that are just like, I'm not good at anything. I've got
Mm.
nothing. So
Yeah.
why should I care?
Yeah. And underpinning a lot of their problem behavior is that fury, rage,
Yeah.
like hatred,
Yeah.
self-hatred.
Yeah. And it's not, yeah, we've got some quite big students that are intimidating physically, like you said, but it's not that. That's not the atmosphere. That's not what creates the atmosphere in the school. It is that you can have the smallest kid in there, but they are just dark. There is a darkness that has already descended on them in their lives, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And that's why when you walk into those places, you either it's like Marmite, is what I say. When anyone new comes into the school to come work there, I'm like, it's like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it.
So how does one, and when I say how does one, how do you, um, because I know you, Ben, right? You're like, you're a good egg, man. It's why you do what you do. Like, I
Um,
really, really fucking like respect, admire what you do. It's incredible, right? And anyone who is in that environment, right?
mhm.
Okay. How does one, namely you, um, do it? How do you do it?
How do I do it? I do it because I can see a bit of me in there. I think that's firstly, everyone that is successful working with those young people can see themselves in those people. Can see that they could have easily got there. Just, there's a sliding door moments, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
No, we could have all been there for, if things had been different. And then the other thing that's really important to me, and this is it is the idea of humanity. And I mean, we were talking about this just before we started this, but this idea, and it might be naivety, it might be my innocent child, but I always want to see the best in people.
Yeah.
I always want to believe that people get up to do their best. And I know Brené Brown's done a big piece on this, and I really love that the work she's done on that. I totally agree with that idea. Doesn't matter who you are, and what life has dealt you, you don't get up in the morning unless you're a psychopath to do wrong. You know, and you get
True.
up with to do the best with what you've been given.
Yeah.
And if you've been given just rubbish hand after rubbish hand, which so many of these young people have, there's there's examples, like there's a kid came in and they didn't have the right shoes on. And, we try and hold a uniform line, but we're also understanding these people, these young people are working in situations or coming from situations where they have nothing. And so this young person came in, they didn't have the right shoes on. They had, and we were like, where's your shoes? And it was after a Christmas holidays, and their parent had sold them because to feed their habit, had sold their school shoes to so they could get some more drugs. And yeah, it was like, you know, you you can't penalize the young person for that. But this is where I go back to the idea of, the system. And if you're in a mainstream school, then that young person may well have got detention or may well have had a sanction or, you know,
Yeah.
you can't be different in a school of 1,000 people.
We thank you for sharing that. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That's the reality, right?
Yeah.
Um, the school that I went to, ah, um, I think 50% of the population tried to get away with wearing trainers on any given day.
Yeah.
I think it's quite common, right?
Yeah.
So how do they police that? Literally, how do they police that? It's a tough gig, isn't it? I do have empathy, if that's the right word, for anyone that's in the system trying to. I mean, it's. Do you feel it's got a bit out of hand from
I,
your experience? From where you're sitting. It's your opinion. You feel
yeah.
it's out of hand a bit, like the way that everything's set up, and have
I
they got
think
any control over anything anymore? Do you feel?
we've set up, the system is set up for polite, young, middle class white kids, uh, for want of a better definition.
Mm,
I think the system is set up to turn out a certain young person with a certain set of qualifications to go and do A levels, to go to university. The system is not set up for anyone that sort of, I don't know, wants to go and be a carpenter or wants to go and work with cars or,
mm,
it's we've got to a state again where it's like everyone has to learn a language. Everyone has to learn Shakespeare. And they are all very worthy things. And it'd be
mm.
great if we could all sit there and, we could learn French and we could read Shakespeare and I'm not knocking that, but some people, it's like they can't eat when they go home. They've got no
Yeah,
food. So really, is it the most important thing to teach them Shakespeare? Is it really important they learn to speak another language? It's like we need to get our priorities straight. Like what's going to benefit that young person? And we're still in this you're still in this world where we can be so individualistic about pretty much everything now, but we can't sort our education out to make it work for the individual. It's still right,
yeah,
just churning numbers out. We're churning masses out. And when you work in a school like 1,000 plus kids, you don't know all the kids. That's why I love working where I do at the moment because I've got 50 kids and I know them all inside out, and I
it's
and I know
incredible
from them.
to have. Yeah, it's incredible just to have a posse of 50 because you can't not know who's who
Yeah,
and get to know them people on a level like you do because I know you do, and that's incredible. It's really good. Yeah, look, what you was just sharing, what you was describing. I mean, I left school in 1991, started in 86, and what you described was what it was like back then.
hmm
What year are we in now?
2024.
Going into 2025, man. What the
Yeah,
fuck?
yeah,
So, and the world is very different, isn't it?
yeah.
I think for me, and this is just the way I see things. Doesn't mean it's right. It's just the way I see things, right? Is that the way that where we've come since I was at school anyway, the 80s and 90s. I mean, it's come a long way, man. I mean, technology has created this sort of like expansiveness of opportunity, and that could be good, and it could be at your detriment and
Yep.
everyone else's. And I think for me anyway, because I grew up in a time when I learned certain skill sets. I mean, for me, school, I learned the art of survival. That was what I got from school. Survival of the fittest. To try and navigate my way through it. Because I was one of those people who wasn't designed to sit in a classroom, sit still for an hour all day long. I'd be staring out the window
Hmm.
in my world of fantasy, creating this new reality that wasn't the one that I'm actually in because it was unbearable. And I've really struggled with that. Apart from being in like art, doing something creative, like saying, getting in wood in my hands and shaving wood and creating stuff, or kicking a football around on the playing field or something. You know what I mean? So for me, I was one of those people, that really, really struggled to not be able to express myself in a way that I knew I needed to, but I felt like I was being contained in sort of almost like a cage. It felt like that to me. I'm only sharing my, how I felt. That's just the way it is. It's just how I felt. So, and that was back then when the world wasn't like it is now. You know,
Yeah.
all I used to do is get my skateboard and skate.
Yeah.
Yeah, every day. Go into the woods, climb trees, burn shit, and skate.
Yeah.
You know? And now it's very, very different. So do you think, I mean, I for myself have got a lot of evidence myself of what I do with my work that suggests that because the world is mapped out in a different way, this is why we've got this sort of, it's kind of like, it seems like there's, it's putting a square peg in a round hole, right? But it's
Yeah.
even worse now.
Yeah. And yeah, we've lost so many of those freedoms. Technology has done different things, isn't it? It's brought us, incredible knowledge, but with that knowledge, I think it's taken away a lot of freedoms. And it's whether we can use it in different ways to actually give us more understanding of the individual. But like you said, I mean, my youth was spent, in fields and in woods and doing things that young people just don't seem to do now, and are terrified. A lot of them are really scared of being out.
Mm.
No, that's the fear that we've created. I mean, I don't remember kids running around with knives when we were young, but I'm sure there were. I'm sure there was some kids that had a flick knife or a pocket knife. Or it now feels like there's just gangs on every corner. There's kids being stabbed all the time. But again, it's whether that's the truth or whether that's just the knowledge that we've spread. So now young people are fearful of going out, and parents are fearful of letting young people out. And we've created a society that's really scared, and is really insular. Um,
Yeah. Because I was talking to someone just just earlier before this call actually about it feels like there's a cloud.
mhm.
You know what I mean? Like it feels like there's a cloud, like a dark cloud looming over us all. And it sounds really morbid. I know that sounds really, really like depressing, but there's this. I know what when I've heard people say about that, I get it. I don't really personally feel like I'm troubled by it because I'm in a good place and I'm living my life in my way that I've learned to do, and it doesn't affect me too much what's going on out there. I don't attach to it. Um, so, but I can understand why for some people it makes sense that if that cloud that everyone seems to be aware of, this, I don't know, do you understand what I'm saying? It's sort of like there's a sense. It's like an angst,
Yeah.
yeah. And collectively, it makes sense if we see it like there is this angst cloud, a cloud hanging over us all, you know? And it's not just in this country. I've been all over the shop, and it's everywhere. There's this sense of like angst,
Yeah.
this impending dodginess that's sort of lingering in the air. It's like a just a lingering sense of there's something not quite right at the moment with the world. So it makes total sense that the younger people, because what I was trying to explain earlier is I'm from that era, you're from that era where we learnt certain skill sets by going out into the woods and being outside and interacting and not having to worry about fucking someone stabbing you in the leg with whatever, just
Yeah.
for walking past them, you know. Um, so we have certain skill sets so that although we're living in this time now, we don't have to suddenly, you know, lose that sense that we've got this basis. I know I don't.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is the younger people that are coming up through haven't really, well, they haven't got that basis, have they? They haven't got that foundation. They've never had.
I mean, I didn't. I mean, I missed out on the nuclear sort of fear, but I've got friends that are 5, 6 years older that were aware of that, and then and then you've got I think we lived through sort of fear of we had the AIDS epidemic. I remember that advert really clearly on the TVs when that gravestone coming out, the tip of the iceberg one, and it was just, yeah, absolutely terrifying. And I just see what young people are being given now, and you can't escape it. You can't escape knowledge now. You can't, whereas we would disappear off out on our bikes and go into the woods and whatever, and the
Mm,
world wasn't. We weren't staring at our phones and staring at social media and getting all this knowledge constantly given to us. At the moment, what have kids? I've heard this a lot. Young people, what have they got to live for in terms of what were their expectations? They know if they work for 30 years, they're never going to be able to buy a house. We're constantly being told the world's going to end in some sort of climate meltdown, and we can see that on a day by day basis. All these the weather and what it's doing to us, and then now we've got for the past 3, 4 years we've been living in a state where there's just wars, that the missiles have just gone this way. And I've really done my best to ignore it all this week and not listen to any news, but I can't escape it. I can't escape
yeah.
the fact that it's escalating hugely, and they're now firing like long range missiles at each other. So
I've only just you've only just educated me on that because I don't know
yeah,
a lot. Sorry for my ignorance, but honestly, I'm too busy doing other stuff
yeah,
to honestly, that sounds really ignorant, but of
none,
course, I'm very aware and I'm very concerned, and I have a lot of, you know, I feel for people, but
yeah,
I'm busy doing, what I'm doing with my work, with helping people that I can right here, right now.
yeah.
It's all I can do.
I think that's all we can do is connect with the communities that we can do that are around us. And it's, like a good friend was getting absolutely obsessed with the American election and Trump, and my point was, what happens if you just turn off the news? What happens if you just turn off social media? You'd Trump does Trump. Trump does America, and how will that actually affect me walking around in my world? And that's, I guess that's what like I just said, I only know about the escalating situation in the war because yeah, a friend has told me. Because it's not that I don't care. It's like I can't affect it. I can't change it. I can only affect what's going on in my world and my community, my immediate community that I can live in a day by day basis.
Yeah. My thoughts go out to them, my heart goes out to them, but I have to focus on what's going on in my community right here, right now. How can I make a difference, right? Okay. Yes. Oh, well, anyway, look, so it's evident the world's gone mad. Dinosaurs are going to return. UFOs are landing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Anyway, no, on a serious note, so your work, right, that you do, are you a lifer? I was talking to my dad, right, not so long ago, right, over lunch about this because I was talking to him. We both identify that we're mavericks, right?
Hmm.
I hate to use that word, but it's the only word that describes what it is. We're outlaws in our profession, if you want to call it that. My dad got into teaching very young. My mum did too. They trained, and my dad and my mum set out, like I'm sure you did. Correct me if I'm wrong. To make a difference, right? I want to do this to the best of my ability. Plus, I want to make a difference, right? Um, my dad's retired, has been for a while. Did it all his life. He was a headmaster, like you. You're a head, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and he said, like you, Dave, I was a maverick. I got into teaching. I was like the maverick head. I wanted to make a difference. Would he do it again? He said. Would he do it again? Would he, if he had his time again, would he do it? He said, probably not. I probably wouldn't do it. And I thought, oh wow, that's quite a statement. Your whole life's, you know, um, resulting in feeling like that. And it was like, why? It's like, well, because he felt a little bit. He did some incredible work, as did my mum. But perhaps he felt a little bit disfranchised from, set out to do something, felt like he could make a difference, make a change, but it became evident that, he probably did. Well, he did. I know he did, bit by bit. Like we was just saying, what can we do right here, right now to make that change? But on the grand scheme of things, not so, you know? So, I don't know. Do you think you're a lifer?
Um, I I know that I've I am restless. I know that I'm a wanderer. I know that when things get hard, I've generally uh, looked to change the circumstances. I've always felt that if things are really tough and you're not enjoying it, then you should go and find something else.
Mm.
But I think recent experiences, uh, I think the journey I'm on currently, in terms of where my life is at, is that I think I'm it's definitely sticking it out more than I have done in the past. I think there were some events last year where I could have quite easily jumped ship, and I decided to stay and I decided to carry on with the work I was doing because I believe in it.
And was that, I dare to ask you, was that bureaucracy by any chance?
Uh, Definitely was part of the many straws that broke my back time. Um, but it's also I get there's the thing with teaching is like you are working with an immovable object a lot of the time. Like we've gone back to what we were saying earlier in terms of that, the wonderful thing about teenagers, that idea that they know everything and you can't change them. But I think it's drip feeding, and I think the thing with teaching is you don't often get that moment where it's like, oh, that suddenly the lights come on and you've made that epiphany. There's an epiphany, and the kid is suddenly transformed. Definitely with the young people I'm working with now, I've had a really good analogy where they talk about this. I had this woman do some work, some training where she talked about the kid losing it when they have their pencil case knocked off their desk. And the teacher's response to that is, "Oh, don't be so stupid. It's just a pencil case." But actually, when you look at it and you unpick that kid, that pencil case might have been given to them by their dad that weekend, and they've only just seen their dad for the first time in 2 years because dad's been left and gone off with another woman or whatever. He's been in prison, and so that pencil case means everything to that kid. So that teacher, by demeaning their response, is really not understanding what's going on for that young person.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And it's not that you're going to change that reaction because they're young, they're impetuous, they're gonna act emotionally. We're still trying to, I know I'm still trying to work out how to control my emotions at my age. So it's not going to change immediately. But what she said was, what you're hoping is by giving them some lessons around that in their mid-20s, when someone knocks their pint over in the pub,
Yeah.
you're hoping they're not going to react by punching that person in the face. They're just going to say, "Oh, it's all right, just buy me another pint." And then they look back and go, "Actually, that teacher that spoke to me when I was 6 or 7 or 12 or 13, they had a point." And that's that's what I think teaching does, is you're laying little seeds that you hope will grow. And sometimes with young people, they grow really quickly and they get apps. I've taught art for years, and there's times where, young people just take what you give them and they run with it. And you're like, oh my God, this is incredible. And then there's most of the time, it's like, oh, really? Have I got to do
Yeah.
this? Have I got to do
Yeah.
that? And yeah, you're hoping in their adult life, they'll look back and go, yeah, that person was all right. They knew what they were talking about. And I'm gonna use that lesson and that learn.
That's wicked. That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So how many other heads do you know that are artists, creative?
None. I've got, well, the head that was at the school we met. She was a music teacher.
Yeah.
Um, and I've got a colleague that I used to work with. I found out the other day that they're a deputy at a school now.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've a few other art colleagues that have made it to SLT, but no one I know that is a head of a school.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is it?
it's not a subject that I think artists on the whole tend to be a bit anarchic, a bit
Yeah,
against this.
totally. Back in the 80s, the art teacher was the one down the pub. Well, no, actually, in the 80s, all the teachers were down the pub at lunchtime. Oh my days. I used to sit in class and be like, "Oh, sir, you're stinking of alcohol." Oh, we was in a recession, weren't we? Bless them.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you're the creative artist. You're an amazing artist. You always show me your art, right? Your latest creations.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah,
what what you
yeah,
work
I'm a starter, not a finisher. I've got lots of projects on the go all the time and never. Yeah, I always say it's about time and I need more time, but actually it's just about finishing stuff. And
well, you're amazing. You are. You
thank you.
create masterpieces, mate. So do your creativity, your art, right? Does that have a huge influence, not just on your life, obviously, but when you go into the working environment? Because I know a lot of pros, you're just trying to contain the situation, doing an art class. I mean, do you do anything creative with these young people?
It's unfortunately, in terms of the position I'm in now, I very rarely teach. Um, but so now creativity for me is sort of, I know it's one of the things that is good for me. You
Yeah.
hear people say, "Oh, if I don't draw, then I don't live," sort of thing, and it's not that extreme. But I remember, I think, yeah, in answer to that question, the first part of it for me personally, I remember being in therapy a few years back and saying to the therapist, "I love running and I love art." She said, "Well, that's really interesting. 'Cause you don't do either of them." And I'm like, and now definitely in the past year, uh, it's something that I now know. If I don't move and I don't draw,
Yeah.
then my head is not good. So I know that they are my part of my toolbox for coping with what I do on a day by day basis.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then actually, I'm just, when I do get to teach art or when I do get to do something creative with young people, I found these exploding books online. It's a bit of origami, and then they sort of fold up into this little thing, and then you pull them open and they burst open. And they're really lovely, really, really nice sort of little creative project. And we had a drop down day at school, and I was just like, yeah, I'll go and teach. I'll go and do some of these with these kids. And I sat down next to this one kid, and she got it straight away. She just, because the folding's quite tricky, and
Yeah.
she watched me. Watched me once, and she did it. She folded all these bits of paper up perfectly. Then she said, "I'm going to fill this book with pictures of me and my dad." and I'm going to give it to my dad. And it was just this kid who, bless them, they are they are angry at the world. Let's just say that
Yeah,
they are getting a lot of trouble, and to see this kid turn into a kid rather than an angry young person, they
yeah.
really regressed and turned into this little kid and was like, "Oh, I'm going to make something beautiful for my dad." And it was just so lovely to see that that's what it can do. That's what creativity can do. And I know I've got an amazing art team at school, a couple really good art teachers, and the kids love art, and they do, and they sit there and they draw, and you can see it is cathartic for them. They get a lot out of it.
There's something I'm a massive believer, right? There's something really powerful about, the creativity that we all of us have, right? Now, a lot of people think, "Oh, I'm not creative," or, "Oh, I'm not artistic." Not so, in my opinion. I mean, we are all hugely creative people, starting with their mind, right? Without getting too into it, but excuse me. You've either got 2 modes of creativity. You're either creating absolute destruction, negativity, mayhem, and absolute misery, telling yourself things that aren't even true, mostly,
Mm. Yeah.
right? Or you flick the switch. That's the hard part. It's really simple. It's a simple premise. You just flick the switch to the way your attitude and the way that you view the world, and you put all of that energy and focus and um what's the word I'm looking for? Movement that the mind is creating, the creativity, what we're creating, thoughts, perceptions, ideologies, narratives, and we channel it into really cool, fucking cool shit.
Hmm.
It's that simple. But just because it's simple doesn't make it easy,
Yeah.
especially for someone like that young person that you just described who's consumed with, you know, anger
Yeah.
and emotions that are yet to understand or articulate or express or process, and so I believe that all we've got to do as humans to our fellow humans that we recognize as being incapacitated with that destructive creativity that we're creating in our minds that then we act out on
Hmm.
is we've just got to somehow tweak it, and engage with these young people or whoever's and say, "Well, no, look, you've got all of this skill set. You are really good at creating fucking mayhem.
Yeah.
We've just got to tweak it and put your focus and your attention into other stuff." So I'm the first one to always um, influence, if that's the right word. I hate fucking influencers and all that shit. Sorry to say that, but I don't not what I mean by that. That's a strong word. What I use then hate. What I mean is, I don't like the association to what influencers have become, right? Because I think we need influencers. I think we need that. I needed influencing when I was in what I just described. I was in complete mayhem and I needed someone to come in and influence my attitude and my decision making and to inspire me and motivate me to make some positive change and tweak exactly what I'm talking about. So we need influencers. There's a lot of stigma attached to it, and I just latched on to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I do. I influence people to harness, to say, no, look, you're not a dropout, you're not a loser. Well, whether you're telling yourself that or maybe you feel other people, you're getting that message from other places, whether it's the home or, the playground or, the street or whatever. You've got this incredible talent and skill set. Just find something that you can actually latch onto, like origami. It's kind of what we was doing in that, school that when I came in, we you remember when we did the music session and they performed? They did the showcase, Christmas showcase.
Yeah, I mean, it's got me wondering. I sometimes think that youth that when we're young, we break things automatically, and I'm just wondering whether I think that because that's what I did, and I imagine that's a little bit of what you did. I wonder whether that's because of where we came from and a product of our upbringing is that actually we try to break things. We try to push things and just go, well, what's the point? And there's a negativity to youth there. I'm sure that's not every young person. I'm sure there's young people that are brought up to realize that things are beautiful and you just create beauty. And I know in terms of my journey, it was art that saved me. It was music that saved me. It was things that I found to be beautiful that I sort of lost myself in this sort of fantasy. Um, but I think, we're all searching for that mentor. We're all searching for that person that's going to come in and go, yeah, you are good enough, and
Mm,
you are good at this. And sometimes those things are on the periphery of what's seen as good or
mm.
not seen as valuable as, I don't know, a maths GCSE that's then going to allow you to become an accountant. It's, the idea that you can be good at painting and that's going to be good enough and that's going to transform your life.
Yeah.
Um, but I think I know I did. I spent a lot of time breaking stuff, whether that was physical stuff, whether that was other people, that was pushing boundaries. And it wasn't until I got older that I've sort of realized, you know, walking into the National Gallery and looking at a painting that's sort of 500 years old and seeing the beauty in it. As a teenager, I was just like, this is rubbish. What is this awful? It's so boring. Another picture of Jesus. And it's like, actually, this was painted with a brush made out of horse hairs with egg yolk and some minerals crushed up. And it looks like a photograph. It's incredible.
Yeah,
But you don't, it's, I definitely didn't think those things as a youth. And I think, the young people that I'm drawn to are also like that. They don't see the beauty in anything because everything is broken. And it's how far you can take them on that journey in the time you have with them.
yeah. Makes complete sense. God, yeah, I do relate to what you're saying. I broke a lot of things. A skater. Do you know what I mean? It's what skaters do, man. We break ourselves.
Yeah, I was about to say you broke yourself, literally. Number.
Yeah. Um, I've got out of the habit of taking the Monday off skating. I mean, when I first came in, it was like, you'd want me in on a Monday. I'm like, sorry, mate, I'm skating that day to break myself. But yeah, makes perfect sense what you're saying. I think what you're saying makes sense. Yeah,
Mm,
totally, totally. Um, and there's a lot of ways to do that, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I feel like I pushed, it's pushing back as well. It's like resistance, right? So I always say this, if you tell me to go left, I'm gonna go right, mate.
yeah,
Even if I kind of know logically that left's the right way to go, because you're telling me to go left, I'm going fucking right.
yeah, yeah. I remember my son when he was really little. He was probably about 3 or 4, and we were sitting at this table with some family friends, and suddenly this woman that was sitting next to him just turned around to him and said, "Stop! You can stop that now," quite firmly. And she looked at me as if I was going to sort of tell her off, telling my son off. And I was like, "Yes, is everything all right?" She went, "Yeah, yeah. He's just kicking me under the table, and he's just getting harder and harder and harder, and waiting to see what I'm going to do to react." And I was like, "Oh, good. I'm glad well, not good he's kicking her, but I'm glad you've told him off because he." She said, "Yeah, he just needs to know where the boundary was." And I've always remembered that because I just think, yeah, that's what we're doing. We're just kicking a little bit harder each time just to see what we can get away with and before someone's going to tell us to stop.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Boundaries, right? So I could go on forever about boundaries. I didn't used to have boundaries,
Mm,
right? And I learned I was taught, you know, I was taught right from wrong, you know,
Yeah.
but a lot of the sort of information I just couldn't, um I wasn't letting it in, whether it was a teacher or a parent. I just certain things I couldn't. That might be the way that I'm wired, you know. Maybe my brain can't settle long enough to retain information. It certainly can now, you know. I've learned how to do it. Um, but boundaries for me, you know, were it was evident that I didn't have any healthy boundaries. And then I learnt through a process of me, you know, redeeming myself from a former hellraiser, if that's what you want to call it. Um, I learned boundaries, you know, healthy boundaries for myself, safe boundaries. Right now, how do you? Because when I started getting into the school system and doing talks on, you know, sharing my experience and everything, I suddenly realized that I had to use boundaries even more. You know, I really had to up the ante with
Mm.
boundaries, right? And safeguarding. And, you know, we had to do a lot of rigorous training on safeguarding, right? As you know, you have to do it, right? So explain to anyone that might find this chat, um, the life, you know, snapshot of how do you retain boundaries, right?
Mhm.
In a place where you've got it's a bit like a not a free for all, but do you know what I mean? It gets a bit wild, right?
Yeah, you can do at times, yeah.
How do you sustain any sort of sense of boundary with anyone in there?
Um, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. I think ultimately, uh, the the system the system is such that, we have to, and this isn't the big system, this isn't the big brother, this is the system of hierarchy in terms of what young people want. Like, young people want parents, and they want parents to be a certain thing, and the same way they want a teacher to be a certain thing. So
Yeah.
I don't and they want the head of school to be a certain thing. So I I have to maintain a certain role all the time.
Yeah.
And that doesn't, and if I try and overstep that, if I try and give them a little bit too much, if I try and give them too much of me i- in a particular setting or in a particular point of time, that I know they've just switched off. They're not, you're the head teacher. You don't tell us stuff.
Alright, sir, shut up, shut up.
Whereas if I've got a really lovely, incredible pastoral team who are able to have those kind of relationships with them because they're seen as slightly different as to the teachers, and they can have a bit more of an informal relationship with them. In the same way, that when we first met and you came into that school, you know, you were an outsider. You could come and tell them stuff that I could never tell them about me, and you could give them more of you. And there's something about that sort of external visitor coming in that young people will listen to in a different way. My job is to be the head of school, and that is what I do on a day by day basis, which means my boundary has to be like, you've overstepped the mark now. Can you stop using that kind of language? You need to stop shouting now. You need to calm down. You need to come and sit in my office and we can talk this through. But you've gone too far, and
Yeah.
that's my role. I can do that in a humane way. I can do that in a calm way. I can do that in a relational way, but I've still got to do that. I can't step out of that and go, actually, kids, this is what I'm like, and this is me. This is what I get up to at the weekend, and
Yeah.
yeah,
And well, that's a good answer. That's, you know, a really good way of outlining that. You know, I totally understand what you're saying. Parents have to play the role of being a parent, right? So I can say things that a parent might have told their son or daughter a million times. I come in and say the exact same thing and they listen to me.
yeah,
You know, and I have to say to parents, that's going to annoy the fuck out of you. It's
yeah,
going to really piss you off that I come in and say something that you've said a million times and it's gone fallen on, deaf ears,
Yeah.
and they will pay attention. It's just the way it is because 'cause I'm not playing a role.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really important to have that. I agree with you, if you don't have that sense of boundary, it will be a free for all.
Yeah.
The lines get blurred. What I thought of immediately was, The Office, whether it's the American or the British version, Ricky Gervais or Steve Carell.
Yeah.
That's an example of a boss,
Yes.
and his boundaries are quite blurred, aren't they? And it shows that they there can be some really beautiful moments if you let that boundary go and you just give them a bit more view. It's that humanness, right? The humanity part. Um, but we're not talking about that. We're not in an office scenario. We're in a freaking crew,
Yeah.
where you've got vulnerable, very, very vulnerable, traumatized people, broken homes, broken hearts, and they need that sense. Probably, I mean, look, I think we both know that a lot of these young people don't have any sense of boundary. They
No.
haven't been shown it, right? So they're coming to you to get it. So I don't know. It's a bit of a tricky one. I mean, some of the schools that I've been in, it was evident. It's just from what I've observed. I'm not saying it's like it now because I haven't been into the school system for quite some time. But when I had gone in, I was a little bit triggered, if I'm honest,
Hmm.
by the amount of the behavior that was being displayed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just from the kids, from the students.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit like, whoa, God, I knew it happened in the 80s, but shit, this still goes down. Like, shaming,
Yeah.
shaming.
Shaming, shouting, screaming, it hasn't changed because people are still people, and it's, yeah, I think, the system doesn't allow for it to change. I think if it's interesting because I think as a boss, as a leader of people, I try to lead in a way that is more humane and more open and transparent. And to the adults, I think I am probably less boundary than I should be. To the adults, a lot of what I do is trying to hold them together to let them be what they need to be with the young people, because that's not what I do anymore. I can have, by the time the young people get to me, I'm the last stop, if you like. But yeah, I'm very much about trying to get my staff constantly to build relationships, to listen to young people, to not shame, to not shout, to not be sarcastic. You know, and it's tough because we're all human, and then there's times I know when the kids push my buttons. I had a kid say to me, "Do you want me to hit you in the head, sir?" And he was really angry at this point, and I thought, "I'll diffuse this with some sarcasm." And I actually said to him, "Yeah, I'd love you to." And he absolutely went for me. So I got it completely wrong that day. So I have to bite my tongue sometimes, and it's yeah. But you go into mainstream schools, and I don't think they stand a chance. You've got 30 kids in a class, and if you've got two or three that are just, "I'm gonna destroy this,"
Yeah.
then what do you do?
Oh, I need to just, that's really tickled me. I'm intrigued. Did he actually connect? Did he hit you? Did he?
No, no, no. This is something, anyone that ever wants to work in kind of settings I work in, they are lovely, safe places to work because these young people would. He went and punched a wall.
Yeah.
He's dead really angry, and I knew the moment I said it. I just said, "Look, I'm going to leave the situation. I'm going to walk away." And he absolutely lost it for a bit and then came and apologized to me.
Yeah, man, they're angry people. I mean, like, they're angry. They've got rage. They've got a lot of rage. I've been in enough of them to know exactly what it's like, and I take my house to anyone that's working in there, man. It's a tough gig. It
Yeah,
really is. I remember I was in one, and one of the young men had to be removed. One of the young lads had to be removed, and he was put into the cooler room, which had a punch bag in it.
yeah.
Yeah, and he always
Not a baseball mitt and a baseball.
yeah, yeah, like, and he was just punching the crap out of a punch bag. But I mean, if you've got to let let it out. You gotta let it out, and that is how can we contain that, you know?
Yeah.
But that's the reality we're working with. Sad, isn't it? Sad, sad, sad. But,
Mm.
you know, not with pity, we're not pitying them, you know, it's just the way it is. So look, Ben, in an ideal world, um, solution,
So,
right?
okay.
In a what's the word I'm looking for? Not dystopian. I think we just described dystopian.
Mm.
What's the other
Utopia.
one? Utopian. Couldn't
Yeah.
think of the word. In a utopian world, what would the school system look like for you? Because you've got a lot of experience, right? You've been in it a long time, long
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you've got a broad sense of it because you've been at different ends of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like you're just you know, the Oxbridge sort of. You're not, you know, you're aware of a broad sense of it all. A lot of takeaways. Um, if you could, what would your school look like if you could create your own?
Um, I would have a lot more. I'd have a lot more space for young people to have individual learning programs. I think we have the technology, we have the understanding now of what young people need. And what we, like you said earlier, we're trying to, you know, square peg round hole. We're trying to squeeze them all through this very narrow hole at the end, you know, that's unachievable for a lot of young people. And I would create a system where we had smaller settings, we had more mentoring, coaching, pastoral ability, and ways of creating those skills in young people that have just been ignored now for the past 20 years. I would
Mm,
say at least. I think we probably got. I think that's what I remember. You know, we talked a little bit about our experiences of school, but I think teachers were allowed to be teachers. They were allowed to be human. And yes, they were allowed to have you know, there was a lot more boundary, I feel then, but
mm,
they could let you in a little bit and they could give you a little bit more. There was time. There was time to give you a bit of humanity, and it wasn't all about chasing grades. Whereas now the expectation is if you haven't got a 4 or a 5 in every subject, you're a failure. And you're reduced to the set of grades on a bit of paper. Whereas actually school should be so much more. Schools should be about building character, should be building social skills, you know,
yeah,
all of those things that make us human and build a better society and communities. Uh, and I think the best educators I've worked with over the years, that's what they've been interested in is people. And the worst educators are just interested in chasing grades.
yeah,
And the worst, and unfortunately, those people tend to end up in the higher echelons of schools and bureaucracy and dare I say it, education ministers. You know, they just that that's what they think is successful is getting an A star or an A grade. And yes,
yeah,
there is obviously credit to that, but I think if we don't churn out decent humans and make everyone feel worthwhile and they're good at something,
yeah,
then we are failing.
yeah. It's really important that something I've learned myself, you know, is I thought I was defined by, you know, I was conditioned, not can't pinpoint specifically how, maybe it was just a message I received over and over and I started to believe it, that, you know, I've got to have the right grades,
Hmm.
you know, the right haircut, you
Yeah.
know, the right everything, you know, everything's external and that everything that defines, you know, my success and my general sense of self, you know, of who I am as a person, and my identity. I tried a lot of stuff, tried everything, went on a vast journey and quest to try and find the thing that would work. As you know, none of it worked. Well, some of it might have worked momentarily, give me a false sense of whatever. But yeah, I mean, I left school 2 A's, you know, art and graphics, creative.
I don't think we've ever shared that, but yeah, I got exactly the same.
Did you?
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, the rest of my grades spelt dude.
I got C's. I got C's in everything else. So I got A in art,
Right.
A in graphics, and C's in it. Just luck of God.
Oh god, I was way on the. I was baked. I was I was I was spaced out, man. I was too. I wasn't present. I wasn't present. So, but anyway, look, I'm here now, doing well, doing good, and I define, my measure of success and happiness and all of that stuff on, well, it's certainly not my grades.
No.
So it's all good. Okay, so excuse me. You just described the utopian, the ideal, right? In your
Yep.
mind. Do you think it's possible? Do you think
Do
it
what?
will do you think it'll ever become so? What you described? Because you're not alone with that. I know you're not.
No. No.
I speak to a lot of people, and what you're saying is there's a common thread. Everything you said is the basis of what all humans and society needs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think it'll ever become a reality?
Uh, Not without some sort of massive shift in society, and I don't want to sound completely nuts and say we need a revolution, but I think that's what we need. Um,
What, like French style?
French style. We are we're disappearing down a hole, and we have been for a long, long time now in terms of capitalism and everything being monetized. And I think education is exactly the same, and I don't see how society breaks out of that. We're too I can't think of the words.
Entrenched?
Yeah, we want too much. We want the car, we want the flat, the house, the we want all this stuff, and we feel failures if we don't have all this stuff. And it would take a huge shift in humanity for us to say no, that's not what we need anymore. And you look at things like Steiner schools. There are Montessori schools. There are schools around where it's about different things. It's not about chasing grades, and it is about the growth of the human. If society believed in them, there'd be hundreds and thousands of them across across the country,
Yeah.
and there isn't.
Yeah.
Um, and they are the exception rather than the rule. Um, so yeah, I think there is a shift in society coming. I'm not sure what it's going to look like or how it's going to happen, but I think we're on a trajectory towards that. It has to happen sooner or later, but
Mhm.
it's going to mean we have to stop working as individuals and start coming together as communities and as collectives. Um, yeah,
Well, there's a lot of people who share that
yeah,
ideology. It's not the first time I've heard that, it won't be the last. And I think as long as these conversations, which, I think it's just an opinion of what you're sharing, it's my opinion. It's just the way we see things in our reality. Um, and we're entitled to that. I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to exchange these sort of ideologies, to sort of, reflect on our own individual lives and how we can maybe change things in our own lives to create a better life for ourselves, starting with ourselves. And then we work from that point outwardly, um, into other areas, starting with maybe friends and
mhm,
family and, your workplace and community. So, yeah, I salute you for doing what you do, man. And I think we should close it off there. I think that we'll get you back on again, and we'll do a little review of where we're at.
how the revolution is going, yeah?
Yeah. Are you leading the charge, Ben?
I'd love to. I'd love to. Yeah.
It's very provocative, that word, right?
Yeah.
It's a very, it's a very provocative word. I don't know why people are so scared of this sort of stuff, of like it being a word that's provocative. It's just a fucking word, revolution. I think it's what it represents. And that's why I said France.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, that's my own
Yeah.
yeah, it's my own bias of what that means, and that's where we get caught up in words, right? So and language, because it can be a threatening or a provocative or an intimidating dialogue, right? Narrative. But in layman's terms, it just means shake shit up, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
Make some change, right?
Yeah.
That's my understanding of what it kind of means.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And we
So,
just change, so
yeah. Okay. Well, look, I think it starts with us, I just concentrate on how can I wake up today and do the best for me today? Not in a selfish way, but how can I be a good human being?
mhm.
And then start from there. That's the starting point.
Sounds
Cool.
good.
Cool, man. All right. Well, look, rest up.
Thank you. And you?
Good having you on. May the force be with you for you back on Monday or Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, man. Well, look, Ben, good having you on. Till next time. Ta-ta.
Take care, my friend. Take care.
Cheers.